In the sleepy town of Willow Creek, Ohio, where the horizon was stitched with cornfields and the rhythm of life moved as slowly as the creek that gave the town its name, Willow Creek High School stood as the heart of the community. With a student body of just under 500, it was a place where reputations were made or broken in the hallways, and secrets traveled faster than the school's ancient Wi-Fi. For 16-year-old Mia Larson, who'd arrived in town just 3 weeks before the start of the fall semester, the sprawling brick building loomed like a maze she wasn't sure she could navigate. Her family's move from Chicago to this quiet corner of the Midwest had been abrupt, driven by her father's new job at the local auto parts factory. Her mother, a nurse, had taken a position at the county hospital, leaving Mia to face the daunting prospect of starting junior year as the outsider in a town where most kids had known each other since kindergarten. Mia was a study in contrasts, fiercely independent yet painfully shy, with a cascade of dark brown hair she used as a shield to avoid eye contact and a wardrobe of faded jeans, hoodies, and sneakers that screamed, "Don't notice me." Back in Chicago, she'd learned to fade into the background at her massive urban high school, where anonymity was easier to maintain. But Willow Creek was different. Here, every new face was a headline, and Mia's quiet demeanor only seemed to draw more curious stares. What no one knew, not even her parents to the full extent, was that Mia carried a secret weapon: 4 years of judo training. She'd started at 12, dragged to a dojo by her older cousin who thought she needed to toughen up. What began as a chore became her sanctuary. Judo wasn't about violence for Mia, it was about balance, control, and the quiet power of knowing she could protect herself. Her sensei, Mr. Tanaka, had drilled into her that judo was the gentle way, a philosophy of using an opponent's force against them, both on the mat and in life. His favorite saying, "Throw doubt out of your mind before you throw your opponent," had become Mia's mantra, and she clung to it now as she stepped into Willow Creek High on that crisp September morning. The first few periods of the day passed uneventfully. Mia kept her head down in English, scribbling notes on The Great Gatsby while her classmates stole glances at her. In Algebra 2, she solved equations quietly, earning a nod from her teacher, Mr. Reynolds, who seemed relieved to have a student who didn't disrupt his carefully planned lessons. By third period, she'd started to think she might survive the day unscathed. But as she navigated the crowded cafeteria at lunch, clutching a tray of lukewarm pizza and a carton of milk, she felt the weight of eyes on her. She found a corner table, half hidden by a vending machine, and ate quickly, her earbuds in but no music playing, just a prop to discourage conversation. She didn't notice the trio of girls watching her from across the room, their heads bent together as they whispered and laughed. By fifth period, home economics, Mia's fragile sense of calm began to crack. The classroom was a cozy chaos of sewing machines, cutting tables, and a lingering smell of burnt sugar from a baking mishap the previous period. Mia chose a seat near the back, hoping to blend into the faded posters of food pyramids and sewing techniques that lined the walls. She was early, unfolding her syllabus and smoothing out the creases, when the room's atmosphere shifted. 3 girls sauntered in, their presence commanding attention like a spotlight sweeping across a stage. At the center was Kaylee Harper, a junior whose name Mia had already heard in passing, whispered in the halls with a mix of awe and fear. Kaylee was tall, with sharp cheekbones and blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail that swung like a pendulum as she moved. Her designer jeans and fitted sweater screamed confidence, and her smile was a blade, sharp and precise. Flanking her were Jenna Ruiz and Brooke Mitchell, her inseparable sidekicks. Jenna, with her dark curls and quick laugh, was the group's instigator, always ready with a cutting remark. Brooke, quieter but no less cruel, had a knack for turning Kaylee's ideas into action, her sly grin hinting at trouble brewing. The trio's eyes landed on Mia almost immediately. Kaylee slid into the seat next to her, uninvited, her perfume a cloying mix of vanilla and ambition. "So, you're the new girl," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Mia, right. From Chicago. What's your deal? You don't talk much, do you?" Mia's fingers tightened around her pencil, but she forced a small smile, hoping to deflect. "Just getting used to things," she said softly, her eyes fixed on her notebook. Jenna, leaning over Kaylee's shoulder, smirked. "What's with the hoodie? You hiding something under there, Chicago?" The nickname landed like a jab, a reminder of Mia's outsider status. Brooke, twirling a pair of sewing scissors between her fingers, let out a low snicker, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Mrs. Callahan, the home EC teacher, was a kind but perpetually frazzled woman in her late 50s, her glasses perpetually sliding down her nose as she wrestled with a jammed sewing machine at the front of the room. She was too preoccupied to notice the undercurrent of tension building at the back. Mia felt like a mouse in a hawk's shadow, every instinct screaming at her to stay still, to avoid drawing more attention. She'd dealt with girls like Kaylee before, bullies who thrived on reactions, who fed off fear or tears. Back in Chicago, she'd learned to walk away, to let them have their petty victories. But something about Kaylee's smirk, the way she leaned into Mia's space like she owned it, made Mia's resolve waver. The next class session, 2 days later, was when things took a darker turn. The week's project was to design and sew a simple dress, a task Mia found oddly soothing. She'd always liked working with her hands, and the precision of measuring, cutting, and stitching felt like a puzzle she could solve. She'd spent the previous evening sketching a pattern for a sleeveless A-line dress, choosing a soft blue cotton fabric from the class supply closet. It wasn't flashy, but it was hers, and she'd taken care to fold it neatly at her station before leaving class. When she arrived for 5th period, though, her fabric was gone. She checked her bag, the table, even the floor beneath her chair, her heart sinking as a cold realization settled in. Looking for something. Kaylee's voice cut through the classroom's hum like a knife. She stood a few feet away, holding Mia's blue fabric aloft like a flag of victory. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. "This is cute. Too bad it's gonna look better in pieces." Before Mia could react, Brooke handed Kaylee a pair of scissors from the sewing station, her grin widening. Kaylee made a show of it, holding the fabric taut and snipping a small, deliberate cut near the edge. The sound of the blades slicing through the cotton was deafening in Mia's ears, a violation of something she'd poured care into. The class went quiet, students pausing their own work to watch the drama unfold. Mrs. Callahan was at the front, engrossed in helping a student thread a bobbin, oblivious to the scene. Jenna laughed, stepping closer. "Go on, Kaylee, make it a crop top," she taunted, her voice loud enough to draw more eyes. Brooke, not to be outdone, grabbed another pair of scissors and moved toward Mia, who was still seated, her hands clenched in her lap. "What's wrong, Chicago? You gonna let us redesign your little project?" Brooke sneered, twirling the scissors dangerously close to Mia's arm. Mia's pulse pounded in her ears, but it wasn't fear driving it was something hotter, something that had been simmering since she'd first felt Kaylee's eyes on her. She'd spent years avoiding conflict, swallowing her anger, letting girls like these win because it was easier. But this wasn't Chicago, and she wasn't the same girl who'd walked away from taunts in the past. She stood slowly, her 5 feet 4 inches frame dwarfed by Kaylee's height, but there was a quiet intensity in her movements that made Brooke hesitate. "Give it back," Mia said, her voice low but steady, cutting through the tension like a wire. Kaylee raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Or what? You gonna cry about it?" She made another snip, larger this time, tearing a jagged gash in the fabric. The class gasped, a few students whispering to each other, but no one stepped in. That was when Mia moved. It was over in seconds, but to those watching, it felt like a slow-motion scene from an action movie. Mia stepped forward, closing the distance between her and Kaylee with a fluid grace that belied her shy exterior. Her hand found Kaylee's wrist, the one holding the scissors, and with a swift twist, she applied a judo technique called tai otoshi, a body drop throw. Using Kaylee's own forward momentum, Mia pivoted and pulled, sending the taller girl crashing onto her back with a resounding thud. The scissors skittered across the linoleum floor, coming to rest under a table. The classroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Kaylee lay stunned, her ponytail askew, her face a mix of shock and rage. Before anyone could process what had happened, Brooke recovered, her loyalty to Kaylee overriding her surprise. She lunged at Mia, scissors raised in a clumsy attempt at intimidation. Mia didn't flinch. Sidestepping smoothly, she grabbed Brooke's outstretched arm and executed an osoto gari, an outer reaping throw, sweeping Brooke's leg out from under her. Brooke stumbled forward, crashing into a cutting table and knocking over a stack of fabric bolts with a clatter. Jenna, who'd been egging her friends on moments before, froze. Her eyes darted between her two friends on the floor and Mia, who stood calmly, her breathing even, the blue fabric now clutched tightly in her hand. Jenna's bravado crumbled. She dropped her own scissors and backed away, hands raised in a silent plea for mercy. The rest of the class was silent, their eyes wide, some with jaws dropped, others whispering furiously to their neighbors. Mrs. Callahan finally snapped out of her sewing machine trance and rushed over, her glasses slipping down her nose. "What in heaven's name is going on here?" she demanded, her voice shrill with panic. The evidence was undeniable. Kaylee and Brooke were sprawled on the floor, scissors scattered like fallen weapons, and Mia stood at the center of the chaos, her expression unreadable. The aftermath was a whirlwind. By the end of fifth period, Kaylee, Jenna, and Brooke were summoned to the principal's office, escorted by a stern-faced Mrs. Callahan. Mia was called in separately, her hands still trembling slightly from adrenaline but her voice steady as she recounted the events. She didn't embellish or exaggerate, simply laying out the facts: the stolen fabric, the taunts, the scissors, and her instinctive response to protect herself and her work. Classmates, some reluctantly, corroborated her story, admitting that Kaylee's group had been targeting Mia since her arrival. The snipped fabric, with its jagged cuts, was presented as evidence, a tangible symbol of the trio's cruelty. Principal Hawkins, a no-nonsense woman who'd run Willow Creek High for a decade, didn't hesitate. The school's zero-tolerance policy for bullying and threatening behavior was clear, and the involvement of scissors elevated the incident to a serious violation. Kaylee, Jenna, and Brooke were suspended for 7 days, a decision that sent shockwaves through the school. Kaylee's parents, prominent in the community, her father owned a local car dealership, tried to pull strings, arguing that their daughter was just joking, and that Mia had overreacted. But Principal Hawkins held firm, citing the witnesses and the physical evidence. She also met privately with Mia and her parents, who were stunned to learn about their daughter's judo skills but supportive of her actions, given the circumstances. By the next morning, the story had spread like wildfire, fueled by exaggerated retellings in the hallways and group chats. Mia wasn't just the new girl anymore, she was the girl who'd taken down 3 bullies with moves straight out of a martial arts flick. Some students whispered about her in awe, others in fear, and a few, like a sophomore named Ethan who'd seen the whole thing, started calling her Judo Mia, behind her back. The nickname stuck, though Mia cringed every time she overheard it. In the weeks that followed, Mia tried to return to her low-profile routine. She repaired her blue fabric as best she could, stitching the cuts with careful, almost meditative precision, turning the damage into a subtle design element of her dress. In Home EC, Mrs. Callahan kept a closer eye on the class, and Kaylee's group, when they returned from suspension, steered clear of Mia, their confidence dimmed by the public humiliation. Kaylee's sharp smiles were replaced by sullen glares, but she didn't dare approach Mia again. The incident also shifted Mia's place in the school's social landscape. Sarah, a shy freshman who'd been a frequent target of Kaylee's taunts, started sitting with Mia at lunch, their quiet conversations about books and music blossoming into a tentative friendship. A few others joined them over time, a quirky art kid named Leo, and Ethan, who admitted he'd always wanted to learn martial arts but was too clumsy to try. Mia didn't seek the attention, but she didn't shy away from it either. She carried herself with a new, subtle confidence, her sensei's words echoing in her mind. She'd thrown doubt out of her mind, and in doing so, she'd carved out a space for herself in Willow Creek. The dress she finished for Home EC wasn't perfect, the mended cuts were visible, the hem slightly uneven, but when she presented it to the class, Mrs. Callahan gave her an A, not just for the craftsmanship but for the resilience it represented. Mia didn't talk about the incident much, even when classmates pressed for details, but she didn't need to. The story had become part of Willow Creek High's lore, a reminder that even the quietest among them could hold a strength no one saw coming. And for Mia, it was the beginning of something new, not just a fresh start in a small town, but a chance to step out from behind her hair and into her own power, one gentle throw at a time.